When I was 5, I made fun of my neighbor. Ryan says little Ryan was too small. He got so upset he didn't eat for 3 days. Years later, Ryan married me to prove himself. I'm practically falling apart from all his attention in bed. But he still won't let me rest. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and slapped him. Enough already. Either we make this work or you get out. He shot up with a fierce look, then suddenly softened. You heartless woman. I knew it. You still think I'm not good enough. Wait, did that hurt your hand? When I was 5, Ryan insisted we compete to see who could pee higher. But my mom said ladies shouldn't do that in public, because it wasn't elegant. So to be an elegant little girl, I brought our dog, Max, to compete against him instead. Max lifted his head proudly, raised his back leg, and Ryan lost miserably. He'd already lost to his dad, lost to his older brother, and now he lost to Max too. Feeling completely defeated as a man, he burst into tears. Seeing him so heartbroken, I quickly tried to comfort him. Don't cry. You can't pee high because your little brother is too small. When your little brother grows up, you'll pee much higher. Ryan looked at Max, then looked at himself, thinking for a moment. That must be it. But he was impatient. After waiting 3 anxious days without eating much, still hadn't grown. So he grabbed scissors and went to his brother, hugging his leg desperately. Bro, can you lend me your little brother? His brother smiled slightly, then smacked him hard and coldly said, Get lost. Finally, he came crying to me, Emma. Everyone knows I can't beat Max. And they're laughing that I'll never get married. If I can't get married, I'll be alone forever. If I'm alone, I can't have kids. If I can't have kids, no one will play marbles with me when I'm old. What should I do? I patted his shoulder generously. Don't worry if no one plays marbles with you. You can come to my house and play hopscotch with me. He wiped his tears, pouting unhappily. But I don't like hopscotch. I thought hard. If you can't get married, that's fine. Other people can get married. You can just be someone else's wife. He blinked seriously considering this, then suddenly had an epiphany. Emma, you're so smart. So he ran home excitedly to tell his dad he wanted to be someone else's wife when he grew up. His dad frowned. His face darkened, and he grabbed a belt, chasing Ryan around the yard all afternoon. Later, holding his sore bottom, Ryan came crying back to me. My dad won't let me be someone else's wife. I sighed. Then you'll just have to stay single forever. His mouth opened, about to cry again. But then he closed it and looked at me with teary eyes. Emma, we're best friends, right? I nodded. And you'd never think I'm not good enough, right? Looking at his dirty face with a snot bubble hanging from his nose, I kind of did think he was gross. But to protect his fragile feelings, I nodded anyway. I don't think you're gross at all. Then marry me when we grow up. My little face scrunched up. Immediately seeing my expression, his mouth started trembling again. I'll give you the biggest candy apple when my dad buys them. I'll pull your wagon and let you ride on my back. I'll give you all my prettiest marbles. I'll even play hopscotch with you. I'll pluck all the feathers from our backyard chickens to make you shuttlecocks. After his long rambling, all I heard was getting the biggest candy apple. Looking at his pitiful face, I sighed and reluctantly agreed. So he ran home excitedly to tell his dad I'd agreed to marry him. This time his dad. I didn't beat him. He even praised Ryan for being promising. But my dad kicked him into a snowbank. When Ryan was 7, his family got transferred to the frontier by the emperor. They were gone for 10 years. So long that I completely forgot about marrying him. Inevitably, I grew up and fell for the minister's clean, handsome grandson. Actually, I didn't just like him. I also liked the grand tutor's second son, and Peter from across the street. Basically, I liked anyone. Good looking. Early one morning, my mom dragged me out of bed while I was still sleepy, rubbing my tired eyes and yawning. I asked, what's wrong? The Wilson family returns to the capital today. We're going to welcome them. My mom and Ryan's mom had been best friends before marriage, and even better neighbors after. Half a month ago, news came from the palace about a great victory at the frontier. General Wilson's family would return soon. Suddenly, I was wide awake. Ryan's coming back too? Yes, he is. So my mom and I rushed to the city gates. Mom immediately spotted Aunt Helen in the crowd. The two women hugged and cried when they saw each other. I looked around but couldn't see Ryan anywhere. After searching for ages, I finally spotted someone who looked about 5 out of 10 like Ryan, in the rear guard escorting war spoils. When he smiled at me, I was certain that was Ryan. Without thinking, I ran over excitedly and burst into tears. I missed you so much. The man seemed flustered, frantically fanning me with his folding fan. Miss, please don't cry. He found so hard, my nose started running. I sniffled and studied the man carefully. Ryan, you've gotten so much taller. Why are you still so skinny? Didn't you eat well at the frontier? Ryan froze and slowly looked toward a man in armor, standing beside him with crossed arms and an unhappy expression. I blinked curiously. Is he your superior? Ryan nodded, but the armored man just snorted dismissively. I frowned, not understanding why he was being rude to me for no reason. I couldn't help glaring at him, and whispered to Ryan, "He's probably just jealous that you have someone here to meet you." The man heard this and snorted again with a dark expression. I clicked my tongue and muttered, "He obviously has attitude problems." Ryan nodded and hummed in agreement, making the man glare at him and snort coldly again. I'd had enough. Hands on my hips. I yelled, "What's with all the snorting? What's your problem?" The man, a full head taller than me, straightened up and stared at me with dark eyes. Without saying anything, Ryan worried we might fight and tugged my sleeve. He's. I pushed away the person blocking me. "My dad just got promoted. Don't worry. I've got your back." Ryan awkwardly pulled his hand back. As we faced off, I realized the tall, dark, muscular man looked strangely familiar. I suspiciously turned to look at Ryan, who was casually looking off into the distance while touching his nose. My mouth fell open as I realized I'd mistaken them. I carefully poked the man's arm and tentatively called, "Wait, are you Ryan?" He grumbled, "Yeah," and walked away. On the way back, Ryan rode his horse, while I leaned out the carriage window watching him. He used to be so pale and handsome as a kid. How did he turn into such a dark guy? He was darker, sure, but his nose was still straight, his features still handsome, and his legs long with a nice butt. Compared to the skinny scholars in the capital, he had quite an appealing ruggedness. Touching my chin thoughtfully, I unconsciously glanced at his legs, remembering childhood events and thinking to myself, what a shame. Such a big frame with such a small pepper. He seemed to notice me watching and glanced back. I quickly looked away and smiled at him. He frowned, and as he turned back, I saw his ears and neck turn bright red. Was he actually shy? How adorable. The Wilson house wasn't ready yet, and both our dads were kept at the palace by the emperor. So my mom warmly invited Ryan and Aunt Helen for dinner at our house. At dinner, Aunt Helen and my mom started talking about Ryan and me. Has Emma gotten engaged yet? Mom shook her head. Her father wants to wait for the spring examination results before making plans today. I think your Ryan seems quite nice. Aunt Helen smiled behind her hand and teased us. Remember when Ryan told his dad he wanted to marry Emma? When they grew up, your husband kicked him into the snow. Ryan came home crying, saying even if Emma's dad hated him, he'd still marry her. The whole table burst into laughter. Aunt Helen smiled at me. So does Emma still have feelings for Ryan? The dining room fell into a sudden, suffocating silence. I had just taken a large sip of swallow nest soup, and upon hearing Aunt Helen's teasing question, I choked. A violent fit of coughing seized me. My mother hurriedly patted my back, while across the table, Ryan's hand froze. He slowly lowered his chopsticks. His dark, sun-bronzed face didn't show much emotion, but I could see the tips of his ears turning a fierce, burning crimson, contrasting sharply with his black hair. Look at them, my mother laughed, entirely ignoring my watery-eyed distress. Emma is already blushing. To think they were practically joined at the hip when they were small. Aunt Helen, mother, please, I gasped out, wiping my mouth with a silk handkerchief. I stole a glance at Ryan. He was staring down at his bowl of rice, as if it contained the secrets of the universe. That was just childhood. Nonsense. Ryan is a great general now, decorated by the emperor himself. Probably has half the ladies in the capital swooning over his horse's hooves. Besides, my dad always said he wanted a scholar for a son-in-law. You know how he is. A cold, low snort cut through the warmth of the dining room. I looked up. Ryan had raised his head. His dark eyes, sharp as a hawk's, locked onto mine. A scholar, he said, his voice deep and slightly raspy, a far cry from the high-pitched squeak he'd had at 5. Those fragile, pale things who catch a cold if a breeze blows too hard? The ones who can barely lift a writing brush without needing a rest. I bristled. Scholars are elegant. They write poetry, they play the zither, and they don't go around smelling like horses and gunpowder. Emma, my mother scolded gently. Ryan's jaw clenched. He gripped his chopsticks so hard I half expected the bamboo to splinter. Elegant, he muttered under his breath, a sarcastic edge to his voice. Right, because elegance is what matters most. I knew exactly what he was thinking. Elegance, the very word that had driven me to bring Max the dog to our childhood peeing contest instead of competing myself. I almost giggled at the memory, but seeing the murderous look in his eyes, I wisely swallowed it down. Instead, I decided to play nice. I leaned forward, giving him a sweet, patronizing smile. Of course, Ryan, but you've spent 10 years at the harsh frontier. I just worry that your constitution might be too rugged for the delicate life of the capital. You must have suffered so much. After all, you were always so delicate. Remember when you didn't eat for 3 days because you were upset? Aunt Helen burst out laughing. Oh, I remember. He was crying in his bed, refusing even his favorite sweet bean cakes. Ryan's face transitioned from red to an impressive shade of dusty plum. He stood up abruptly, his massive frame casting a long shadow over the dining table. Mother, Auntie, I am full. Excuse me. Without waiting for a reply, he turned and marched out of the dining room, his heavy boots thudding against the wooden floorboards. My, he's still so hot-tempered. Aunt Helen sighed, though she didn't look displeased at all. She winked at my mother. But a strong man is a healthy man. Wouldn't you say? My mother chuckled, and they went right back to discussing marriage compatibility charts, leaving me to contemplate the empty doorway. Rugged. Indeed, I thought, remembering the sheer breadth of his shoulders and the way his thighs gripped his horse. He really had grown up. The next afternoon, the spring sun was exceptionally warm. To escape my mother's endless chatter about potential suitors, I took my maid Lucy to the Imperial Market. As luck or fate would have it, I ran into Julian, the minister's grandson. Julian was the epitome of capital elegance. He wore a spotless sky-blue robe, carried a painted paper fan, and had a face so pale and fair he looked like he was carved from mutton-fat jade. He was currently standing outside a bookstore, surrounded by a few other scholars, reciting a newly composed poem about Willow catkins. Ah, Miss Emma, Julian said, his eyes lighting up as he spotted me. He closed his fan with a graceful clack and bowed deeply. What a poetic coincidence to meet you here. I was just describing the beauty of the spring breeze, but seeing you, I realize my words are entirely inadequate. I felt a flutter in my chest. This was what I liked. No shouting, no dirt, no terrifying stares. Just sweet, sugary compliments. Young Master Julian is too kind, I said, hiding a smile behind my sleeve. Your poetry is always so refined. If Miss Emma would do me the honor, there is a tea house nearby that serves the finest jasmine. Before Julian could finish his sentence, the ground beneath our feet seemed to vibrate. The steady, heavy clip-clop of a massive warhorse echoed down the street. The crowd parted instantly, whispering in hushed, intimidated tones. I turned my head. It was Ryan. He was riding a pitch-black stallion, dressed in a simple, dark gray tunic that clung tightly to his broad chest and muscular arms. Didn't wear a helmet, and his wild, dark hair was tied back in a high ponytail. He looked terrifyingly handsome, like a dark deity of war descending upon a peaceful village. He reined in his horse right next to our little group. The horse snorted, blowing a gust of hot air that ruffled Julian's pristine blue robes. Julian stumbled back a step, his pale face turning a shade whiter. Ryan didn't look at Julian. His gaze was fixed entirely on me, dark and heavy. Emma, he said, his voice deep and commanding. Ryan, what are you doing here? I asked, suddenly feeling very self-conscious. My mother sent me, he said flatly, though his eyes flicked briefly to Julian, with an expression of pure disdain. She said she bought some dried venison from the frontier and wanted me to deliver it to your house. Since you're here, you can take it. He reached behind him and tossed a heavy, cloth-wrapped bundle. It didn't land in my arms. It landed squarely in Julian's hands, knocking the wind out of the poor scholar and forcing him to drop his elegant fan to the dusty ground. Oh, my fan, Julian gasped, struggling to hold the heavy bundle of meat. Oops, Ryan said, his tone entirely devoid of apology. He looked down at Julian. From his high horse, his eyes narrowed. My hand slipped. You look a bit weak. Young master, do you need help holding a little dried meat? This is brute behavior. Julian stammered, his face flushing with embarrassment as he tried to hand the greasy bundle back to me. Brute. Ryan chuckled, a low, dangerous sound. He suddenly dismounted. Didn't use the stirrup. He simply vaulted off the horse, landing with a heavy, solid thud right in front of Julian. He was easily a head taller than the scholar, and twice as wide. In the frontier, we call it being useful. If a man can't even hold a piece of meat, how is he supposed to protect his family? Ryan, stop it, I hissed, stepping between them. I felt a bit embarrassed by his bluntness, but also, strangely thrilled. There was something undeniably captivating about the way he stood, solid as a mountain, shielding me from the rest of the street. Ryan looked down at me. The harshness in his face softened just a fraction, but his jaw remained tight. Are you defending him? He's a guest of the capital, and a respected scholar. I whispered. Don't be so rude. He's a sissy, Ryan muttered, loud enough for Julian to hear. Julian's eyes went wide. How dare you? I am a scholar of the Imperial Academy. We fight with our minds, not our fists. Good for you, Ryan said, reaching out and casually grabbing the bundle of venison from Julian's weak grip with just 2 fingers. He then took my wrist. His hand was huge, warm, and calloused, completely wrapping around my forearm. Let's go, Emma. The meat is getting cold. Wait. My maid. She can walk behind us, Ryan said, dragging me away. I looked back at Julian, who was dusting off his ruined fan with a look of utter defeat. I felt a little guilty, but as I looked at Ryan's broad back and the sheer strength in the arm holding me, my heart did a strange, erratic flutter. We walked toward my family's estate. Ryan led his horse with one hand and kept his other hand firmly wrapped around my wrist. You can let go now, I said, tugging gently. We're almost home. He didn't let go. Instead, he gripped a little tighter, though not enough to hurt. Why do you like him? He asked suddenly, his voice tight. Who? Julian? I blinked. He's polite. And handsome. And he doesn't drag me through the streets like a sack of potatoes. Ryan stopped in his tracks. He turned to face me, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that made me want to take a step back. I am handsome too, he said, completely deadpan. I stared at him, stunned by his sheer shamelessness. You're dark and rough. The sun in the frontier is hot, he defended himself, his chest heaving slightly. And I have muscles. He doesn't have muscles. If a bandit attacked you, what is he going to do? Read a poem at them? That's not the point. I huffed. The point is you have no manners. You're just like you were when you were 5, always trying to compete and prove you're better than everyone else. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Ryan's face fell. The fierce, confident general vanished for a second, replaced by a flash of that same vulnerable, heartbroken 5-year-old boy who had lost to a dog. His grip on my wrist slacked, and he slowly let go. You still think I'm a joke, he whispered, his voice dangerously quiet. Ryan, I didn't mean. You think I'm weak. You think I can't protect you. You think. He swallowed, his eyes dropping to the ground. You still think I'm not good enough. He didn't give me a chance to explain. He swung himself back onto his horse, turned the stallion around, and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. I stood there in the middle of the street, clutching the bundle of venison, feeling like the worst person in the world. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the look on his face. He had spent 10 years at the frontier fighting wars, probably facing death every single day, all to return as a decorated hero. Yet the moment he was around me, he was still that insecure little boy who desperately wanted to prove himself. Wait, I thought, a sudden realization hitting me. Why is he so insecure around me? Is it really because of the childhood pea contest? I remembered the words he said before he left. You'll never think I'm not good enough, right? And my fake promise. I don't think you're gross at all. Marry me when we grow up. He had taken that promise to heart. He had spent 10 years holding on to it, while I had gone around liking every handsome face in the capital. And then there was his little brother issue. I sat up in bed, my eyes wide. Oh my God. He's probably still traumatized. Thinks he's physically lacking. He thinks that's why I don't want him. That's why he's so obsessed with showing off his strength. A wave of maternal, no sisterly, no something, compassion washed over me. As his childhood best friend, it was my duty to help him heal his trauma. If he thought his constitution was weak, I had to help him supplement it. The next morning, I snuck into the family kitchen. I called the head chef over. Chef Lin, I whispered conspiratorially. Do we have any sheep kidneys? Or maybe some black-bone chicken? Ginseng? Cordyceps? Chef Lin blinked, looking thoroughly confused. Yes, Miss Emma. We have plenty. Are you feeling unwell? No, not me, I said, my face heating up. It's for a friend who has spent many years in the cold frontier. His young energy is severely depleted. He needs something very strong. Double-strength kidney strengthening soup. Can you make it? Chef Lin's eyes widened, and a knowing, slightly scandalous smile spread across his face. I understand, Mississippi. The lower burner needs nourishment. Say no more. I will prepare the most potent formula, guaranteed to make any man rise to the occasion. Yes, exactly. Thank you, I said, completely oblivious to the double meaning. A few hours later, I had a thermos of extremely thick, pungent, dark brown soup. It smelled strongly of medicinal herbs and organ meats. Perfect. I called Lucy. Deliver this to the Wilson Manor. Give it directly to Ryan. Tell him I made it myself to apologize for yesterday, and he must drink every last drop for his health. Lucy looked at the thermos, then at me, her expression highly suspicious. But she nodded and left. I sat in my room, feeling incredibly proud of myself. I am such a good friend. Once his yang is restored, he will feel much more confident. I went to bed early that night, feeling at peace with the world. Around midnight, a sudden draft of cold air woke me. I opened my eyes, rubbing them sleepily. The window to my chamber, which I always locked before bed, was wide open. The white curtains were billowing in the wind. Before I could scream, a large, warm hand clamped firmly over my mouth. Don't scream. It's me. A deep, furious voice whispered in my ear. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked up. Ryan was leaning over my bed. He wasn't wearing his armor or his formal robes. He wore only a loose black inner tunic, half unbuttoned, revealing the hard, muscular planes of his chest and a collarbone that looked like it was carved from granite. His hair was damp and messy, and his eyes were practically burning. In the dark, he smelled of rain, pine, and medicinal herbs. He slowly removed his hand from my mouth. Ryan, I hissed, scrambling backward until my back hit the headboard. Are you crazy? This is my bedchamber. If my father catches you, he'll chop off your legs. Let him try, Ryan growled. He didn't back away. Instead, he climbed onto the edge of the bed, trapping me between his arms. His massive frame completely shadowed me, making my room feel suddenly very small and very hot. What are you doing here? I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. He looked incredibly predatory, like a wolf that had finally cornered its prey. He reached into his robe and pulled out an empty thermos, the very one I had sent him. He slammed it down on the bedside table with a loud clack. What is the meaning of this, Emma? He demanded, his voice dangerously low. It's soup. I stammered. To apologize. And to help you. Help me. He leaned closer. I could feel the intense heat radiating from his body. The yang strengthening soup had clearly done its job. His skin was flushed, and his breath was hot and heavy. Do you know what my mother said when she saw this? She laughed so hard she nearly cried. She asked me if I was failing already. Failing? I blinked. What does that mean? I just wanted to help your lower burner. You know, since your little brother is too small. Emma. Ryan practically roared my name, though he muffled it at the last second. His face was a mix of absolute mortification and wild fury. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm but careful not to hurt me. Who told you my little brother is too small? He hissed, his dark eyes locked onto mine. Well, I saw it when we were 5. I argued, my stubbornness kicking in. You couldn't pee higher than max. And you cried for 3 days because your little brother wouldn't grow. I was just trying to be nice and give you some kidney soup to help it grow now. For a long, agonizing moment, Ryan just stared at me. Then his shoulders began to shake. He let go of my shoulders and covered his face with his hands. I thought he was crying, but then I heard a low, choked sound. He was laughing. He was laughing so hard he looked like he was in physical pain. What's so funny? I demanded, puffing out my cheeks. I was trying to help your fragile feelings. Ryan finally lowered his hands. The fury was gone, replaced by an expression of pure, wicked amusement. His eyes trailed down my face, down my neck, and stopped at my collarbone, making my skin prickle with heat. Emma, he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming incredibly smooth and suggestive. Do you really think a 5-year-old's body is the same as an adult's? Well, no, but. And do you really think a dog lifting its leg is a fair comparison to a human? I suppose not. He leaned in so close his nose was almost touching mine. I could smell the faint scent of wine on his breath, mixed with the herbal soup. You've been worrying about my size for 10 years? I was just being a good friend. I squeaked, my face burning so hot I felt like I was going to combust. A friend, he repeated, his gaze darkening with a different kind of heat. He reached out and gently twirled a lock of my hair around his thick finger. Emma, I didn't spend 10 years surviving the bloody frontier just to be your friend. And as for my little brother, he leaned down, his lips brushing against my earlobe, sending a violent shiver down my spine. When we get married, I will show you personally just how much he has grown. I promise you, you won't be calling him small ever again. Before I could process the sheer, scandalous weight of his words, Ryan pulled back, gave me a wicked, dashing smirk, and vaulted back out the window, disappearing into the night as quickly as he had arrived. I stared at the empty window, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the whole house could hear it. Oh no, I had created a monster. The spring examination results were announced 2 weeks later. As expected, Julian did very well, placing in the top 3. My father was absolutely ecstatic. He immediately invited Julian and several other high-ranking scholars to our house for a celebratory banquet. I was forced to dress up in my finest pink silk dress, my hair styled elegantly, with pearl hairpins. I sat next to my father, feeling incredibly bored as the scholars recited dry poetry and debated political philosophy. Miss Emma, Julian said, raising his cup of wine toward me. He looked very smug, clearly enjoying the attention of my father. Now that the exams are over, I hope to have more opportunities to discuss literature with you. Perhaps a walk in the plum blossom gardens. My father beamed, A wonderful idea. Emma, you should. She's busy. A booming voice interrupted. The doors to the banquet hall were pushed open, and Ryan walked in. He wasn't wearing his casual clothes today. He was in full glorious military armor. Silver plates over dark leather, a red cape flowing behind him, and his sword sheathed at his waist. He looked incredibly imposing, a stark contrast to the delicate scholars in their silk robes. General Wilson. My father stood up, surprised. What brings you here? We did not expect. My apologies for the intrusion, Uncle, Ryan said, though he didn't look sorry at all. He bowed politely to my father, then turned his gaze to me. His eyes swept over my pink dress, a flash of possessive fire turning them dark. He walked over, his heavy armor clanking with every step, and stood right next to my seat. He ignored Julian entirely. I came to deliver some news, Ryan said, looking at my father. The Emperor has decided to hold an imperial martial exhibition tomorrow. He has invited all the young nobles of the capital to participate. The winner will receive a reward of their choosing. My father's eyes lit up. An imperial exhibition. That is a great honor. But what does this have to do with us? Ryan smiled, a sharp, confident grin that made my stomach flip. I have entered the exhibition, and I would like to invite Miss Emma to watch. Julian sneered slightly. General Wilson, this is a celebration of intellect. Martial skills are indeed useful for defense, but they lack the refinement of the mind. Surely Miss Emma would prefer a poetry reading. Ryan slowly turned his head to look at Julian. The smile on his face grew wider, but his eyes were ice cold. Young Master Julian, Ryan said, his voice dripping with mock politeness. Refinement is useless if you cannot protect what is yours. Why don't you join the exhibition tomorrow? We can see if your mind can stop an arrow. Julian's face went pale. He swallowed hard and looked away, unable to meet Ryan's terrifying gaze. Ryan turned back to me, his tone softening just for me. Will you come, Emma? I looked at his confident, dark face, remembering his promise from 2 weeks ago. My heart did that stupid flutter again. I'll come, I whispered. Ryan's grin widened, and he gave me a look so intense it made my toes curl. Good. Don't blink or you'll miss it. The next day, the Imperial Martial Arena was packed. The Emperor sat on his golden throne, surrounded by ministers and generals. I sat with my parents in the VIP gallery, my hands nervously gripping my handkerchief. The exhibition began. It was a brutal display of strength, archery, and swordsmanship. But the moment Ryan stepped onto the field, the entire arena fell silent. He wore only light leather armor, his muscular arms completely bare. He held a massive black iron bow. He didn't just shoot arrows, he dominated. He drew the heavy bowstring with effortless grace, his muscles rippling under his tan skin. With a sharp twang, he released 3 arrows at once. Thwack, thwack, thwack. All 3 hit the absolute center of the bullseye, splitting the previous arrows in half. The crowd erupted into deafening cheers. Next was the sparring. One by one, the capital's top guards and young generals challenged him. Ryan defeated them all. He moved like a shadow, swift and deadly, his movements incredibly fluid and powerful. He didn't even break a sweat. He was magnificent. After defeating the final challenger, Ryan stood in the center of the dusty arena, his chest heaving slightly. He raised his sword, and the crowd went wild. The Emperor stood up, laughing heartily. Excellent. Truly a tiger of our empire. General Wilson, you have proven your strength today. As promised, what reward do you seek? Ryan sheathed his sword. He didn't look at the Emperor. He turned his body, his eyes searching the grandstands until they locked onto me. He knelt on one knee, his head bowed, but his voice rang out loud and clear through the entire arena. Your Majesty, this subject has only one wish. 10 years ago, before I left for the frontier, I made a promise to a girl. I promised to marry her when I returned. I have survived 10 years of war just to fulfill that promise. A collective gasp went through the crowd. All the young ladies in the gallery began whispering furiously, looking around to see who the lucky girl was. Ryan raised his head, his dark eyes fixed squarely on me. I ask your Majesty for a marriage decree. I wish to marry Emma, the daughter of the Minister of Rights. My father gasped, nearly choking on his tea. What? My mother, however, squealed with absolute delight, clutching her cheeks. Oh, my. He did it. He really did it. The Emperor looked at my father, then at me, and let out a booming laugh. Romantic general. How rare. Minister Emma, what say you? Do you object to this match? My father looked at the Emperor, then at the muscular, terrifyingly powerful young general kneeling in the dust, and realized he had absolutely no choice. If he refused, he would be offending both the Emperor and the most powerful young military family in the capital. My father sighed, his shoulders slumping. This subject has no objections. Wonderful, the emperor declared. Then let it be written. A marriage decree is granted. I sat there, my face burning, my heart beating like a drum. I looked down at Ryan. He was still kneeling, but he had raised his head to look at me. He gave me a slow, wicked, victorious wink. I'm doomed, I thought, but a massive, unstoppable smile spread across my face. Anyway, the wedding was the grandest event the capital had seen in years. The streets were lined with red lanterns, and the sound of gongs and drums filled the air. I wore a heavy, beautifully embroidered red bridal gown, my face covered by a sheer red veil. Throughout the ceremony, my mind was a whirl of excitement, nervousness, and a lingering, terrifying anticipation. When the evening finally came, I was escorted to the bridal chamber. I sat on the edge of the massive, silk-draped bed waiting. The door opened, and the scent of light wine and pine wood entered the room. Heavy, steady footsteps approached. The red veil was slowly lifted with a gold-plated rod, revealing Ryan's face. He had changed out of his formal robes into a loose, red silk inner tunic. His dark hair was let down, framing his handsome, rugged face. His eyes were incredibly dark, burning with a hunger that made me gasp. He sat down next to me on the bed. He didn't say anything at first. He just reached out and gently stroked my cheek with his thumb, his callous skin sending shivers down my spine. You're finally mine, Emma, he whispered, his voice incredibly deep and husky. Ryan. I started, my voice trembling. You shouldn't be so smug. Just because we're married doesn't mean. Shoo, he whispered, leaning in and capturing my lips. The kiss was gentle at first, but it quickly grew intense, hot, and demanding. He pulled me against his hard chest, his massive arms wrapping around me like iron bands. I felt completely overwhelmed, drowning in his scent, his warmth, and his sheer undeniable masculinity. And then, he began to prove himself. To say he was enthusiastic would be an understatement. He was relentless. It was as if 10 years of pent-up longing, jealousy, and childhood insecurity were unleashed all at once. He wanted to prove he was strong. He wanted to prove he was big. He wanted to prove he was, beyond a shadow of a doubt, better than Max the dog, Julian the scholar, and every other man in the world. And he had the stamina of a horse. Hours passed. The candles burned down to their wicks. The sky outside began to turn a pale, dusty gray. But Ryan still wouldn't let me rest. Every time I tried to pull the blanket over my head to sleep, he would drag me back, his eyes burning, his lips whispering wicked promises in my ear. Emma, do you still think I'm too small? Emma, tell me who is bigger, me or that scholar? Emma, are you still tired? I can go all night. Finally, my body was aching, my legs felt like jelly, and my mind was practically falling apart from all his overwhelming attention. I couldn't take it anymore. When he leaned down to kiss my collarbone again, I gathered the last ounce of my strength, raised my hand, and slapped him across the cheek. Smack. It wasn't a very hard slap. I had no strength left, but the sound was loud in the quiet room. Enough already, I gasped out, my voice hoarse. Either we make this work, meaning you let me sleep, or you get out of this bed right now. Ryan shot up. His eyes flashed with a fierce, dangerous look, his chest heaving, his jaw clenched. For a second, he looked like the terrifying general on the battlefield. But then, as he looked at my teary, exhausted eyes and my pouting, swollen lips, his expression suddenly softened. He slumped down, looking incredibly pitiful. You heartless woman, he mumbled, his voice cracking slightly as he touched his cheek. I knew it. You still think I'm not good enough? I stared at him, utterly dumbfounded. Are you serious? You just ran a marathon on me, and you still think you're not good enough? Before I could speak, he suddenly reached out and grabbed my hand, the one I had used to slap him. He held it gently, inspecting my palm with a look of deep concern. Wait, he whispered, rubbing his thumb over my knuckles. Did that hurt your hand? I have a lot of muscle on my face. You shouldn't hit me so hard, you'll bruise yourself. I looked at his giant, muscular frame, his flushed, handsome face, and the incredibly tender, worried look in his eyes. The absurdity of the situation hit me all at once. Here was a man who could command armies, who had defeated the nation's greatest warriors, who was currently holding me captive in his bed with his sheer size and strength. Yet, the moment I frowned, he was still that same incredibly sweet, sensitive 5-year-old boy who was terrified I would think he was gross. My heart melted completely. I let out a soft, tired sigh and pulled my hand back, but only to cup his cheek, the one I had just slapped. You idiot, I whispered, my voice softening. Come here. Ryan blinked, his dark eyes wide and hopeful. He slowly leaned down, resting his forehead against mine. Are you still mad? I'm exhausted, I corrected, wrapping my arms around his broad neck. You don't have to prove anything to me anymore, Ryan. You won. You beat Max. You beat Julian. You beat everyone. You're the biggest, strongest, most annoying husband in the entire world. He let out a low, satisfied chuckle, his chest vibrating against mine. And I love you, I confessed, my face heating up as I buried it in his neck. I've loved you since we were 5, even when you had a snot bubble hanging from your nose. Ryan stiffened slightly, then let out a laugh that was pure, unadulterated joy. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me so close there was no space left between us. I didn't have a snot bubble, he murmured, his lips pressing a sweet, gentle kiss onto my forehead. You did. It was huge. I don't care, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As long as you're my wife, I'll pull your wagon forever, Emma. I'll give you all my candy apples. Just don't ever look at another scholar again. Deal. I smiled, closing my eyes, finally feeling a wave of peaceful sleep washing over me. Now let me sleep. If you wake me up again before noon, I'm throwing you into the snowbank. Ryan chuckled, his large, warm hand gently stroking my back as he pulled the heavy red blanket over both of us. Sleep, my wife. I'll protect you. And finally, wrapped in the warmth of my giant, ridiculous, incredibly loving husband, I fell asleep, knowing that the little boy who had cried over a dog had grown into a man who would love me fiercely for the rest of our lives. 1.